So, good morning everyone. I am Alpia Ashraf and today I will be presenting on the topic BOP. So, let me take you back to the past, the times where the needs and wants of human beings were minimal. Food and shelter, as simple as that. But as time progressed, their needs and wants too progressed. They began to demand more and more. So, automatically the production also increased. And they began to produce again and again and again until at some point of time it came to be that what they produce domestically is not enough to satisfy their wants. And this is the point where the concept of exports and imports were introduced. And people began to export and import goods from other countries, and it continued on until it reached our present modern world where we simply cannot survive without exports and imports. Take China as an example. It is said that a person cannot spend even a single day without using at least one product of China. It's right, isn't it? We use Chinese products every day. And imagine the number of exports and imports to and from China will happening in one day. And China will need to keep a track of all these transactions, wouldn't they? And there, my friends, comes in the role of BOP. It is basically a record which keeps track of all these transactions between different countries. So let's take a look at the formal definition of BOP. So basically, BOP is an accounting statement which records all the international economic transactions between the residents of a country and the rest of the world. Now, it is recorded during the period of 1 year, therefore, it is a flow concept. Now, we have a table of contents here. I have already explained the meaning, and then I will be discussing items in BOP. So, what are the items in BOP? We have 4 main items: visible items, invisible items, unilateral transactions, and capital transactions. So, let's start off with the visible items. What are visible items? All those physical goods and merchandise that we can touch and feel, tangible items. All those come in the category of visible items. Examples we can take as consumer goods like clothes, books, etc. Then we have invisible items, which are, as you have guessed it, as services. All those services which are exported and imported and are intangible in nature are known as invisible items. Then unilateral transactions. Maybe some of you already know that uni means one. So we can derive from there that it is a one-way transactions. In these transactions, the receiving party does not give anything back to the giving party. It is a one-way. It's not like our normal transaction. And the fourth and the final item are capital transactions. These are the transactions which cause a change in the assets and liabilities of a country. Moving on to our next topic. This is a small topic, balance of trade. We have learned what is balance of payments, BOP. Now, what is this BOT? Balance of trade is basically the systematic record of international economic transactions in visible goods. Yes, that's the key point. In BOP, we include 4 items, as I have told you, but in BOT, only visible items are involved. Only visible items. That means we only record the exports and imports of goods. And the balance of exports and imports in a country is called trade balance. And here is a formula to calculate that, which is visible exports minus visible imports. Now, I have told you what is BOP and BOP. Now, let's see what is the difference. So, here is a definition of BOP. It's an accounting statement that provides a systematic record of all economic transactions between residents of a country and the rest of the world, while BOT is the difference between amounts of exports and imports of a country. Now, in BOP, as I told you, it includes 4 items, while BOT only includes visible items. And in BOP, all transactions of capital nature is included, while we already know BOP only includes visible items, so it does not record any transactions of capital nature. Then in BOP, it is a wider concept, and since it has 4 items and BOP records visible trade, it is included in BOP. So, it is a wider concept while BOT is a narrow concept, and that is also the reason why unfavorable BOP can be met out of favorable BOT, because it is a wider concept, right? Let me show that to you by using a symbol diagram, and we can take this as BOP. It is a big concept, a wider concept. So, we can fit this box inside this box, can't we? That means unfavorable BOT can be met out of favorable BOP. But can we fit this box inside this one? No, we can't. That's why unfavorable BOP cannot be met out of favorable BOT. So, onward to our next topic. Okay, autonomous and accommodating transactions. So, what are those? So, firstly, let's talk about autonomous transactions. These are the transactions which are undertaken with a profit motive. It does not depend upon the state of the BOP. They don't care what the BOP is in. They just want to earn profit, and so they perform these transactions. And let me tell you one thing. Imagine that the BOP is stable. It is balanced. The exports of a country is equal to the imports of a country. And suddenly, take a firm, for example, firm A performs an autonomous transaction, and this causes an unbalance in the BOP. So, we have to take accommodating transactions to correct it. Now, autonomous items include exports of goods and services, autonomous unilateral transactions, and autonomous capital transactions. It is basically the same as the items in the BOP, just add an autonomous word in the front. And as for accommodating transactions, now I told you that autonomous items cause an unbalance in the BOP. So, to correct this unbalanced BOP, we take accommodating transactions. These are undertaken to correct the balance of payment disequilibrium. The items of this include foreign exchange reserves, borrowings, and lendings. So, when there is a disequilibrium in BOP, like exports of a country are not equal to the imports, the government takes accommodating transactions. Mainly RBI takes this by using foreign exchange reserves, and due to these transactions, the BOP is corrected and the exports will be equal to imports again. And we have current account and capital account. Oh, I missed a point. I told you that in autonomous transactions, these 3 items are recorded in both current account and capital account of the BOP, while the accommodating transactions are only recorded in the capital account. So, I have written here visible and invisible items and unilateral transactions. It does not include any item of capital nature, while capital account includes all items, and foreign direct investment, which is FDI, portfolio investment, we also call it as FII, foreign institutional investment, is also included, and then borrowings and lendings. So, allow me to explain each of these components of the accounts to you. So, I already explained visible, invisible, and unilateral transactions. So, let's move on to FDI, foreign direct investment. So, what is that? Basically, let's imagine a foreigner is coming to our country, India, and he is purchasing, for example, a factory there. So, he pays money and purchased a factory. So, the ownership of the factory is transferred to him, and he is the owner of the factory. This is an example of FDI. And there is a slight difference between FDI and FII. It is basically the same with just a small difference, which is that in FDI, the ownership is transferred to the purchaser, while in FII, the ownership is not transferred to the purchaser. Take purchasing a share, for example. If we purchase a share of Tata, doesn't mean that we own the entire company of Tata, does it? We own only a small part of it. Then we have borrowings and lendings. when the India borrows from other foreign nations, there is an inflow of money from the other countries to India. And this will be recorded in the credit side of the BOP as there is an inflow of cash to our country. And in lendings, money is going from India to the other countries. So money is going out of our country, doesn't it? So it will be an outflow of cash and therefore is recorded in the debit side of the BOP. Now onward to our next topic, disequilibrium in BOP and its causes. A situation where the exports are not equal to the imports. I have already told you this, and when exports are greater than imports, known as surplus. When our exports are more than our imports, it is called as surplus. And when our imports are more than our exports, it is called as deficit. And there are three main causes why this happens: economic causes, social causes, and political causes. Economic causes include inflation, change in demand, etc. While social causes include change in the preference of consumers, fashion, change in trends, etc. While political causes, mainly we know about political disturbances and political instability, don't we? And that will cause disequilibrium in BOP as well. So that's all. Thank you all for listening. Any questions? Yes?
Can I have an example for unilateral trade?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Example for unilateral trade.
Yes, an example for unilateral trade. We had COVID-19 situation, didn't we? And in some countries, the government provided to its citizens through direct payments. They paid money to the public to improve their situation. But the government did not get anything in return to that, did they? So this is an example of unilateral transactions.
If the BOP is unfavorable, how can the central bank, say RBI, use foreign exchange here?
RBI can use the foreign exchange to pay the other countries so that the balance will be, BOP will be corrected. Any other questions?
What is the role of deficit in BOP?
Deficit basically means when the imports are more than the exports. That's the deficit. So to correct those, the Reserve Bank of India and the government will take many measures.
Can you give some expenditure which comes in debit side of capital account?
Yes, whichever transactions which lead to the outflow of money from our country will be in the debit side. And when cash comes into our country, it will be recorded on the credit side.
Can you give some examples?
Okay, so if a foreigner comes to a country and buys something like I told you earlier, a factory, then his money is coming into our nation. So it will be recorded on the credit side. But if an Indian person goes to a foreign country and buys an asset there, then cash is flowing from our country to their country. So it is an outflow of cash and it will be recorded on the debit side.
Could you provide a better comparison in the form of an explanation between FDI and FII?
Okay, so in FDI, the ownership will be transferred, like you will own the thing, what you purchase. But in FII, you cannot own it. Like if you purchase a company, then you can own it. But if you purchase only a share of the company, then you are not the owner of it, are you? You just own a small part of it. That's the difference. Like the complete ownership is not transferred.
What if I purchase 51%?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yes.